Hi, Michael.
Hi.
The question for today is, what would be a significant difference between will and desire? Desires are those that direct the will. Can we choose what we want?
Okay. The will is made up of desires. The will, we can say, is the totality of all desires. Desires in all their various forms, likes, dislikes, attachments, fears, hopes, all these elements essentially are desire. So the will is nothing but desires. But desire here can also include most of our desires are desires for things other than ourselves. But having come to this path, we now desire to know ourselves. We desire to surrender ourselves. So in that sense, desire in that sense is all included in the will. So our will is either drawing our attention outwards, if what we desire things outside, whereas if what we desire is just to surrender and subside back within, our will draw us back within. So bhakti is included in the will. Bhakti is the will that is directed in the right direction. Regarding desires directing the will, not well, as I say, the will is the totality of all desires, but our desires are often conflicting. That is, particularly, we see this very clearly when we're on the spiritual path, because we know that what we should want is just to subside and surrender ourselves completely. But we still have so many desires for external things. We still have so many attachments. We've still got so many fears, likes, dislikes, and so on. So our will is often pulling us in different directions, and different elements of the will are pulling us in different directions. So we can't say that desires direct the will, because the will is the totality of all desires. But desires are what is directing our attention, whether to go inwards or to go outwards. And the last question is, can we choose what we want? That's a bit of a yes and no. Ultimately, we all want what we want. So we can say everything that we want it because we choose to want it. Nobody forces us to want anything. So ultimately, our will is ultimately completely free. No one can make us want what we don't want, and no one can stop us wanting what we do want. Sometimes we have to compromise sometimes we have to sacrifice one thing that we want in order to achieve another thing. But that doesn't mean that we are choosing not to want that. We still want that. But we want the other thing more, so we give up one object of desire in favor of another object of greater desire. But as we proceed along this spiritual path, because we are turning our attention within, we are slowly cultivating and strengthening the love to know ourselves. So the liking to turn within increases. As we turn within, our power of discrimination we get more and more clarity the more we turn within, and the more clarity we get, the more love we have to turn within, and the less we are drawn by our desires outward. So the outward going desires lose their strength, and the love to turn within increases in strength. So we can choose to, now we've got many desires. We're aware that some desires are what are ultimately good for us, and some desires, though it's for things that seem to be good for us, they're not really good for us. We understand that. So we can try to wean our mind off the desires which are not good for us, and to cultivate the desires which are good for us. So yes, we in that sense we can choose, but ultimately we want what we want. And if we reduce the strength of one desire, it's because we have a greater desire for something else. For example, we all, so long as we are embodied, we will all have, to some extent, embodied means so long we experience ourselves as a body. As a body, we have certain needs. We need air, we need water, we need food, we need clothing, we need all these things. So naturally, we've got likes and dislikes. We like those things which seem to make our life more comfortable, but seem to provide us with safety and security. We dislike those things that are detrimental to our comfort, or that could put our life in danger. So we have all these likes and dislikes there, which are inevitable so long as we experience ourselves as a body. Because we all have desire for life, for existence. So long as I think I am this body, I want this body to continue existing. So we cannot be completely free of desires, of likes and dislikes and so on, so long as we experience ourselves as a body. So
I don't know. I don't know, Michael, if it's your experience. Sorry, go ahead if you want to add something else. Sorry.
Yeah. So so long as we identify ourselves as a body, we will, to a greater or lesser extent, have likes, dislikes, desires, attachments, and so on. But since we've come to this spiritual path, we understand that the true happiness that we're seeking doesn't actually lie in any of these external things. And we also recognize, though we cherish this body so much, this body, it's a temporary appearance. We all know it's going to die one day. So why to attach so much importance to this body? So slowly, we wean ourselves, we can wean our mind away from its desires. We cannot give them up entirely, but we can reduce the strength of our desires by increasing the love to turn within. And eventually, when we turn within keenly enough, we will thereby see what we actually are. Ego will be destroyed. We'll no longer experience ourselves as a body. Therefore, we'll no longer have any likes, dislikes, desires, attachments, fears, or anything.
Yes, when you said that we are ultimately free, completely free to like to want what we want. I can hear some people that might argue that, but I didn't choose to like what I want. It's something like, I don't know, it came naturally.
You still want it. You still want it.
Exactly. But I mean, is that unnecessary that question? Is that a necessary question to say, okay, I have it, exactly, so it's here. Yeah. So yeah, what cares if I don't know where they come from? So it's here.
Yeah. But logically, no one can deny, but we want what we want, and but we don't want what we don't want. It's a simple logic. But yes, we do want things that we now recognize. Though I want this thing, this is not necessarily good for me. We understand that, but we don't yet understand it deeply enough and clearly enough. If we understood clearly that all these desires and attachments are only creating problems for us, we understand that to a certain extent. That's why we're trying to free ourselves from them. But if we really understood with complete clarity that desire and attachment for anything other than myself is giving me only trouble, we would give up all our desires and attachments and cling only to ourselves. So we come to this world with so many vasanas. Vasanas means our likes, dislikes, desires, attachments, and so on in seed form. In a previous life, we had a different identity. So we had desire for the objects of our desire were different. We had a different husband or wife, different parents, different children, different property. We may have had a different nationality, a different religion. Well, all these things may have been different. So the objects of our desire would have been different. But when we come to this life, those desires remain in us in seed form as vasanas. And when they sprout in this life, they sprout for different objects, but essentially they're the same desires, same likes and dislikes. So, what we now want and desire and so on is a result of is the sprouting of the vasanas which have come from previous lives. But we can't say, but we don't want what we want. If we want it, we want it because we want it. But because we have, as I said, our desires draw us in many directions. We come to understand through by reflection and by thinking about Bhagavan's teaching, we come to understand that certain desires that we have, certain likes and dislikes that we have, are not good for us. So now, though I still want that, I also want to be free from that. So slowly, slowly, by turning my attention back within, by surrendering myself, I free myself from those desires. But when I said that we are the only, because no one can deny, but we want what we want, and we don't want what we don't want. So in that sense, our will is perfectly free. But the only limitation on our will is that the different elements of our will, that is, different desires, are conflicting with each other. If I fulfill this desire, I have to give up the object of some other desire. So there's desires are pulling us in so many directions. There are conflicting desires. So the only limitation on the freedom of our will is other elements of our will. So all the limitations on our will are internal limitations, not external limitations. Nobody from outside can stop me from wanting what I want. They can stop me from getting what I want. They could even maybe stop me trying to get what I want, but they cannot stop me wanting what I want.
And are desires like a kind of, maybe it's not the right word, but energy, but like an impulse to, like, it doesn't matter so much the object of our desire. It's like it has to go outwards and grab some activities, some
desires are a great force that is dragging our attention hither and thither.
Yeah.
Why we go outwards? We're impelled by desires, but we go outwards. But those desires, where they get their strength from? They get their strength only from us, because who is it who desires? I desire. I want this. I want that. I like this. I like that. So the culprit is that I. So that's why Bhagavan obviously we can understand from Bhagavan's teaching, desires, likes, he says likes and dislikes are to be disliked. So he gave us a general idea, desires are not good. But what he focused his teaching on is this I. Because I is the real culprit, that I in the sense of ego, because it's as ego, but we have all these desires. So if we want to free ourselves from all desires, ultimately, the only way is to cut the root of desire. The root of desire is ego. So Bhagavan focused all his teachings on ego. But there are two paragraphs in Nana where he talks about Vishaya Vasanas. Vishaya Vasanas are our outward going desires in seed form. How he said that we should tackle these, he doesn't say that we should try and fight with our desires. He said, however many thoughts arise, however many vasanas arise in the form of thoughts, they will all lose their strength and eventually be destroyed if we cling firmly to self-attentiveness. So he put all his emphasis, his solution for all problems is self-attentiveness. Because they're cutting at the very root of all the problems.
Yes, because giving the attention to the desires only makes to transfer the desire to another. Maybe you can get rid of a desire, but it will that impulse that I was talking about, maybe it will transfer to another object.
Yeah. And trying to control our desires forcibly. I mean, trying to, for example, one desire, but is very common to most people. Most of us have a fairly strong sexual desire. That's something we have to live with because we identify ourselves with the body. It's part of being embodied that we have sexual desire in some form or another. But when we're following the spiritual path, we know that well, any desire is not good for us. So we know we've got to wean our mind off this desire. So long as we're always hankering for sexual pleasure, our mind is going outwards. Look at the objects of sexual desire are external objects. Sexual desire is one of the powerful desires that draw our attention away from ourselves. But supposing we decide, okay, sexual desire is very bad. I'm going to live a celibate life. I'm not going to let my mind dwell on any of these things. That may work for some people, but it doesn't always work, because sometimes the more we try and suppress those desires, the more that hankering is there in the mind. So sometimes it's better to within limits to satisfy the desires, and then when we satisfy the desire, then we're more clearly able to see, but there's really nothing in this. But what seems to us to be a very big thing is actually nothing. Bhagavan said, the nature of desire is such, it will make even an atom appear as big as Mount Meru before you attain it. And even Mount Meru will appear as insignificant as an atom once you attain it. So sometimes we have certain desires, it can be better to fulfill them because then we more clearly understand, but actually there's nothing in this. There's no great pleasure in these things. The only pleasure there is in sexual sexual pleasure is entirely derived from the satisfaction of our hankering for that. Because we hanker for it, when we experience it, we're temporarily satisfied. So actually the happiness or the pleasure we experience is from within ourselves, not in those things. So sometimes when we experience these things, it's easier for us to discriminate, and I mean we're able to see more clearly. But really, there's nothing. These things are not as pleasurable, or as they are not offering us as much as they seem to be offering us.
And sometimes even we feel like it leaves this satisfaction of a desire leaves like you feel like a sharp drop after or come down after, and it's like what?
Yeah. Because
now what?
The thing is, we can never be completely satisfied, because if we want complete satisfaction means infinite satisfaction. We can find that only within ourselves. So however much satisfaction we gain from external things, it's never entirely satisfactory. There's always a dissatisfaction. Like we can see that in people's pursuit of wealth. Is there anyone in this world, I mean, any of these rich people, are they satisfied with the money they've got? Jeff Bezos now has nearly $200 billion. It said that his wealth increased by $13 billion in one day last week. But is he satisfied? He'll be a little bit happy, but still he wants more. So he's not really satisfied. So, I mean, I just cite one example, but I mean, that is the nature of seeking happiness outside ourselves. We are never satisfied. People desire positions of power or status in society. When they achieve those, they're still not satisfied. They want something more. Even when they reach the top, even when they become president of the United States, they're still not satisfied. Because nothing can satisfy us, because whatever we experience, it's finite. It's limited in time, and it's limited in space, and it's limited in so many ways. Whereas our real nature is infinite happiness without any limitations whatsoever. So nothing less than infinite happiness can satisfy us perfectly.